Mr. Stutzman, you are under arrest for arson.
This is a mistake. Today is our wedding.
Miriam stood before the mirror in the church's small room and looked at herself as if she were seeing a stranger. The dress white cotton, not a single ornament, as Ordnung requires. 3 months, stitch by stitch, and now her hands trembled so much the buttons seemed ready to pop off. "Ready?" her mother asked, straightening the bonnet on her head. "Yes," she said. A lie. Before dawn, Omram had knocked on her shutter so insistently the dog in the yard jerked against his chain. "Maybe we should postpone," he whispered in the dark. "Just a week. Silas is pushing his project forward. And there was a fire. The unfinished poultry house. The police are already combing the area." "No," she had said then, "today." Now it was noon, the field near Paradise, 170 people under white tents, and a warm wind lifted the ribbons on the women's hats. Bishop Jacob opened the prayer book, and Omram, standing across from her, tried to hold his shoulders square. The tightness in his jaw gave everything away. He looked around more often than calm would allow. "Omram Stutzman and Miriam Lapp stand before God," the bishop began. Sirens wailed far off. Not the heavy howl of fire trucks, but the short, sharp bursts of police cars. Another and another. A murmur ran through the rows like wind moving over wheat. Omram blanched. He leaned toward Miriam. "Sit," he whispered. "Now, do not move." "What?" "Please, sit on the bench and keep quiet. Don't scroll. The best part is coming up. Subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment." He set his palm lightly on her elbow, and in that palm there was no plea in order. She obeyed. The bishop closed the prayer book and lifted his head. Between the buggies and wagons appeared Sheriff Harrison with 2 deputies. Miriam knew him. He bought eggs and honey from them. Today his face was as hard as an axe blade. "Mr. Stutzman," the sheriff's voice carried over the hushed congregation, "we have reason to believe you were involved in the arson of an industrial site that occurred early this morning. You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney." "On what grounds?" The bishop stepped forward, gripping his cane as if it could stop the world. The sheriff did not raise his voice. "There is an eyewitness who saw Mr. Stutzman near the site at about 1:50 am. Firefighters took casts of a boot tread in the soil, and that pattern matches boots we already seized during a morning search authorized by a judge. On a kerosene can found on his property, there are fresh fingerprints that are undergoing preliminary identification. A rapid test showed traces of hydrocarbons on the soles. That is sufficient for arrest." The words hung in the air like a bell's ring after the strike. A judge's warrant. Seized. Rapid test. Miriam felt the benchboard drop away beneath her. "No," she burst out. "This is a mistake." The sheriff looked at her sympathetic, but firm. "Miss Lapp, I understand what day this is, but we are following procedure." Omram did not resist. He threw Miriam one brief look. His lips did not move, but his eyes said, "Trust no one." He held out his hands. The metal cuffs snapped indecently loud, and someone in the crowd gasped. A little girl began to cry. Her mother covered the child's face with her hand. The men tightened their shoulders, the women their lips. "Bishop," the sheriff added, "we will inform you when the date for the preliminary hearing is set. Today, we are not commenting on details." "This is a wedding," Jacob said hoarsely. "And early this morning, 2 volunteers who were first on the scene almost burned," a deputy answered. "We were fortunate the building was empty." Miriam looked around for her brother. Ephraim stood in back, gray as ash. Gnawing a nail, he was not looking at Omram, but somewhere to the side at the grass, at his own boots, at the ground. His hands were shaking. Brothers and sisters, Silas King stepped into the center of the meadow. Black suit, a hat that cast a perfect shadow. His voice even calm, almost pastoral. "Today is a difficult day, but order comes first. We will not allow the affairs of secular courts to tear our unity apart." Miriam clenched her bouquet. Silas's words were honey, but they tasted like ash. Order above all, and they were leading Amram to the car, and no one could help him. Sit, her mother whispered, placing Miriam's arm back to her side. Sit, daughter. She sat. Her breathing turned short, like a fish on the bank. The sheriff was already leading Amram between the wagons, and each step echoed like a hammer blow. Just before getting into the car, he turned again quickly, as if he feared they would take even this last look away. "Hold on," she read. "I'm here," she answered without sound. When the cars pulled away, the field seemed to lose its color. Some began a low hum, some a prayer, others empty words of comfort. The bishop closed his eyes and was silent a long time, holding his cane in front of him like a cross at a funeral. Then he said quietly, "The gathering is over. Let us go home." People began to disperse, careful not to meet one another's eyes. Miriam stood, trying not to fall. Ephraim was already disappearing among the buggies. Silas was shaking someone's hand, repeating the same thing. "God is testing us." The wind plastered a white ribbon from her hat to the ground, and she did not pick it up. She knew one thing: the truth exists, and if the police had brought handcuffs and protocols here, she would bring them something else. Something that weighed more than rapid tests and tread casts. She looked at the empty space where Amram had just stood and, for the first time that day, stopped trembling. Evening. The Lapp's house. Her wedding dress lay in a crumpled heap over the chair back. Cotton had lost its festivity and become just fabric. Father sat by the window with a pipe, a rare weakness he was ashamed of, but today he did not hide. Smoke rose in a straight column and dissolved in the dusk. "The police are wrong," Miriam said, and she herself heard a thin, "it seems," slip between the words. Amram could not have. "Silence," Father replied without turning. "The bishop called a meeting for tomorrow at midday. In Silas's barn there is more space there. We will talk then." "But," I said, "hush," he cut off, sharp as a blade. He had never spoken like that. Mother froze by the table with a dish towel in her hands. Her movements became small, overly careful, as if she feared spooking something invisible. The radio on the dresser, an old battery set, they used only during bad weather, hissed faintly. In the morning, the same announcer's voice had read the news, a call to a fire around 1:58 a.m. The unfinished industrial poultry house on the edge of town. The birds had not yet been brought in. No injuries. The investigation continues. Firefighters spoke of traces of a gasoline spill and clear boot treads in the mud. Miriam pressed those facts to her heart like sharp stones. They cut, but they would not let her forget it had all been real, not a nightmare. Ephraim sat opposite, peeling the edge of a label from a can he had not opened. His hand shook, his eyes dove to the table and then into the window's darkness. When he finally raised his head, his gaze slid past his sister, as if he was afraid of catching on something. "Did you see anything?" Miriam asked softly. "That night. You were coming back late from bird in hand." The chair scraped the floor when he shot to his feet. "I did not see anything," he said too quickly. "Nothing. Why is everyone questioning me?" And he left, slamming the door so hard the pipe trembled in Father's fingers. Mother set the towel down like a cover on a wound. "Leave him," she whispered. "He has troubles of his own." What troubles? Miriam would not let go. Mother looked into her daughter long, painfully. "Debts," she said at last. "For seed after the spring flood and for the roof repair. He borrowed from Silas lends to everyone who will not insure crops. And then the July storm beat up the corn and the tobacco. The neighbors combined barely brought in half. Now he has to pay back without a harvest." The word debts fell into the room like a stone into a well. Silas, king deacon, and the richest man in the county, not only owned fields, barns, and dryers, but also loaned money when banks turned away those who lived our way. Paying back did not always mean money. Sometimes work, sometimes silence. "Is this because of the coffo?" Miriam asked, though she knew the answer. Not the small shed for 3,000 they talked about once, but the plan for several houses, 20 to 30,000 broilers in each, with waste lagoons and sleepless nights for anyone living half a mile away. "Do not start," Mother said sharply. "You and your Omram have already stirred up a fuss with petitions. Enough for today." Instead of answering, Miriam threw on a shawl and went outside. Evening damp licked her ankles. The barn was dark and quiet. She climbed to the hayloft, their little hideout, where she and Omram had talked away half the summer, figuring out how to live after the wedding. "Miriam," she started. Ephraim emerged from the shadow. Shoulders slumped, chin unshaven, wet dust on his boots. "You scared me." "Sorry," he muttered, sitting beside her. The smell hit her harsh, grainy. Vodka or cheap whiskey, the kind boys sometimes used for courage. In their community, such things were not spoken of aloud, but everyone knew. "You've been drinking?" she asked, though it was obvious. "One," he sighed. "Two, I did not count." He covered his face with his hands. When he spoke, his voice broke. "Miss, I did something stupid." Her heart dropped to her heels. "What exactly?" "I cannot say," quickly. "I cannot. But Omram," he gulped air like water, "he is not guilty. What happened it was not him." "Then tell the truth," she whispered, taking him by the wrist. He flinched, but did not pull away. "Tell the sheriff, the bishop, me. They will grind me up," he exhaled. "You do not understand. Silas." "Silas what?" A chill ran down her back. "I cannot," he said firmly, like a jagged nail. He stood, swayed, stepped toward the ladder. "Forget it. Please, forget." "Is it tied to the debts?" she called after him. He stopped. A long pause. "I thought I could work it off," he said at last. "Night jobs. Haul something, clean something up, patch something. No foolishness. But once you go into debt, the door shuts behind you, and you are no longer the one who sets the terms." He stumbled down and disappeared into the yard's darkness. Miriam sat still. The hay dust pricked her cheeks, and she wanted to sneeze, but did not move. In her head, three names arranged themselves stubbornly: Ephraim, Silas, Omram. A rope ran between them, and who would pull whom over depended on a few words her brother did not dare to speak. She remembered the blue pickup with the little fish Jesus saves on the back window, the one Ephraim had arranged last year through a Mennonite cousin. The papers were not in his name, but the keys were. "For the time of youthful freedom," the elders said, closing their eyes. In their village, such things happened. Boundaries were always thinner than they seemed. Below, a door creaked. Father stepped onto the porch, stood a long time peering into the dark, then went back inside. Mother put out the lamp. The window, like an eye, went dark. Night wrapped the yard, the barn, her shoulders. "Lord," Miriam whispered, not noticing the salt wetting her chin, "give me a thread, something I can sew all this back together with." She climbed down from the loft and stepped into the yard. The next morning after the arrest, Miriam harnessed the horse before dawn. The road to the station in Intercourse stretched slowly, the horse skittish at intersections. Outside the sheriff's building, English journalists were already crowding. Cameras, microphones, long cables gleaming with dew. She lowered her veil and hurried past, covering her face with her hand. They called something about arson and arrest at a wedding, but she did not stop. Inside, the desk clerk halted her. Sign the visitor's log, identification. Miriam had only a letter from the community and a note from her father. The clerk, sighing, wrote down her name, the metal detector arch. Belt and pins leave in a locker. They allowed her one short visit through glass. 20 minutes, miss. Omram sat on the other side of the partition, in a plain collarless shirt, tired but composed. On the table sat the dark handset that connected two worlds. She sat and took her handset, barely stopping herself from pressing her palm to the glass. "Do not cry," he said first, his voice dull but even. "I am not crying," she lied. "What really happened?" "A setup," he answered without a pause. "The sheriff has probable cause. A witness says he saw me near the poultry house around 1:30. They have tread casts from the mud and boots they seized from me this morning on a warrant. They found a kerosene can in the shed. On it there are fresh prints, a preliminary match, as they say. That is enough to keep me here until the hearing. Where were you that night? She asked quietly. At home. Asleep. Alone. He made a short grimace. A bad alibi, I know. No one to confirm. The boots, Miriam swallowed. Does their tread really match the tracks? Boots like half our men wear old work and walks, size 10. The tread is similar, but not unique. I had not cleaned them after the field residue on the soles grease, just like everyone else's. When they came with the warrant, they took them. And that cursed can. I have not bought kerosene in months, but everyone keeps empty cans for lamps or tractor oil. They say there are fresh fingers on the handle. Fresh, but whose? At the station they already took my prints, now they are lining it all up. The witness, she whispered. Joseph, the corners of his mouth twitched barely. Says he saw me by the house. Says he recognized the buttons on my jacket. He shook his head. I was not there, miss. She nodded, gripping the handset until her fingers went numb. I will do something, she said. I will find what will break them. Not rumors, evidence. Careful, he replied. You know our Ordnung. What could save me could burn you. He looked into the glass, right into her eyes. If there is no other choice, forget me. Live. Do not say that, she said, and her voice frayed. Do not you dare. He wanted to smile, but only a warm, shadowed half-circle appeared. The hearing is likely tomorrow or the day after in the morning in Lancaster. The sheriff said, the on-duty judge. They may set bail. I will hold on. You will too. A guard tapped the metal frame time. Miriam pressed her palm to the glass. He mirrored the gesture on the other side. The glass was cold, and the cold cut to the bone at once. I love you, Omram managed to say. She barely nodded because the sharp, needle-fine ache rose in her throat again. They had already stood him up and led him down the corridor. Outside, she drew a breath. The journalists turned their heads toward her for a moment, but did not recognize her under the veil. She took a step and felt a light touch on her shoulder. Miriam Lapp, a quiet voice, careful. A girl about 19 stood before her in a simple Mennonite dress. No lace, but machine stitching at the edge, headscarf tied in a knot, not with pins. Her face was pale, her eyes dark and worried. Yes, Miriam said, glancing warily at the station door. Who are you? Hannah Mast, the girl swallowed. I am from Millersville. I study environmental science. I need to speak with you. In private, not here. Miriam felt a spring tighten in her chest. Environmental science, Millersville, a Mennonite. Too many unfamiliar words for the morning after an arrest. About what? She asked anyway. About what happened last night by Silas's poultry house. Hannah lowered her voice. I have a recording, night footage. I cannot share it with the police without consequences for my family. But I cannot stay silent either. You will understand why. Miriam felt the jail's glass echo inside her again, but no longer as ice, as a blade. A recording. Night. The words clicked into place. There is a diner on the outskirts, Hannah said, nodding toward the highway, where a low brick building with a sign reading breakfast all day showed through the trees. They do not ask questions if you do not want them to. We will sit in the back. Let us go, Miriam said without hesitation. She looked back at the station door once more and felt, for the first time in a day, that she had a thread she could pull. Not prayer and not pleading, not rumor and not sympathy. A thread that could set everything differently. They walked along the shoulder. Hannah moved tense. As they crossed the road, the girl added almost a whisper. I know this goes against your rules, but there are places where rules are walls and places where they are stairs. Miriam did not answer, but one corner of her mouth lifted. Stairs lead upward too, and sometimes the only way to save a home is to climb higher than is allowed. In the roadside diner, they took a booth in the far corner. The waitress brought water and coffee and moved away. They spoke softly. "I am at Millersville," the girl said. "My name is Hannah Mast. I am writing my senior thesis on the impact of large farms on the Conestoga River. On the night of the fire, I filmed the area around Silas's new houses with a drone. Recording time from 1:03 to 1:12 am according to fire radio traffic. The call went out at 1:58 and so my video is about 45 to 55 minutes before the fire." She pulled out a thin laptop, powered it on, and plugged it into the outlet under the table. The screen showed the dark site of the unfinished structure. By the end wall, a work lamp was burning. A trench, piles of materials, and tire tracks were visible. "A regular camera, night mode, no thermal," Hannah explained. "I kept altitude so as not to draw attention. Here are the time stamp and date." She enlarged the lower left corner of the video, 1:03 and 11 seconds m. Today's date. Then she opened a tab with telemetry, the flight path, coordinates, altitude, heading. The data were synced to the video. "I will skip to 1:05, she said. Two figures stepped into the pool of light. One taller, with precise, confident movements. The other shorter, carrying a can, catching on the lip of the trench. The can fell. They picked it up. "You cannot see faces," Miriam stated. "No, the height and lighting do not allow it," Hannah replied, and skipped to 1:07. "The taller figure walks toward the shoulder. A pickup is parked here. When they open the door, a car passes. Its headlight flashes across the pickup's back window for a moment. Do you see the decal?" Zoomed in, the outline of a fish with the words, "Jesus saves," became visible. "That is Ephraim's pickup," Miriam said quietly. "The same decal. He got the truck last year through a Mennonite cousin. The paperwork is in the cousin's name, but he is the one who drives it." Hannah nodded and skipped to 1:12. "The shorter figure is carrying the can again. Look at the shoulders, small, jittery movements. Then a sudden glance back. That could be characteristic of a particular person, but of course there is no direct confirmation." "Joseph," Miriam said, "the bishop's son. He moves exactly like that." "My cousin went to school with him," Hannah replied. "Says he is fidgety, usually runs small errands at gatherings. I mention this as context, not as proof." She paused the video and pulled out a small flash drive with a library sticker. "Here are copies of the recordings and telemetry. Raw files with no compression. On this sheet are checksums. I keep the originals separately. If the police file an official request, I can hand them over through a university channel." Miriam tucked the drive into the inner pocket of her skirt. "Thank you. I will do my best to keep your name out of it," she said. Hannah glanced at the door and lowered her voice again. "I cannot go straight to the police with this. In our circle, technology is not forbidden, but night filming on private land will raise questions in the community and at home. For you, it is sensitive too, so I am giving the material to you and you decide. If you want to show it to the community, I know your barn does not have electricity. The Mennonite school has a portable generator and a projector for fairs. I can loan them with no names attached. You can say they are educational materials." "That will do," Miriam replied. "The bishop needs to see this, and everyone else too." "Be careful," Hannah said. "Silas is connected to people's debts. He applies pressure. Some agree to things they would never have agreed to before." "I know," Miriam said. "Last night my brother spoke of debts. He was frightened." Hannah gave a brief nod. "If you need anything, tell me. I am reachable, but better without names and details," she added. They shook hands. Miriam went out first, looked at the street. Light traffic, no journalists nearby. She headed for the buggy. A clear plan of action clicked into place in her mind. In her pocket was the flash drive with the video and logs. It was not a retelling and not someone's opinion. The video showed a pickup with a distinctive decal, a time, a place, a route. There was telemetry. There were checksums. It was enough to cast doubt on the case against Amram and to demand the police revisit the testimony. The rest would be up to the community, to accept a showing in the barn as an exception and to look at the facts. Miriam climbed into the buggy and took up the reins. The next evening, Silas's barn was full. People stood shoulder to shoulder. There were not enough benches. Bishop Jacob in the center of the circle, 3 deacons beside him. At the doors, 2 boys from the community to keep out the press. By the side wall lay equipment new to such a place. It had come from the Mennonite school without names. A white fair banner served as the screen. They tied it to the rafters with rope. Before starting, a few men checked that the straw had been pulled back from the doors and set a bucket of water just in case. No one argued aloud that the Amish do not use electricity in the barn. Everyone understood this was an exception. The bishop said briefly, "For the establishing of fact." Silas spoke first. Black suit, words honed. "Brothers and sisters, we have gathered because of a misfortune. One of my unfinished houses burned. Thank God, no one was hurt. The police are at work. I ask you not to scatter suspicions. There is Ordnung, and there is the secular court. The community must remain united." "Unity is not a substitute for truth," Miriam said. She stood at the edge, by her mother and father, her heartbeat steady. "I have material that must be shown. It was filmed the night of the fire, roughly 50 minutes before the call. There is time, and there are coordinates." A low murmur rolled through the barn. Silas turned to her. "Cameras, screens, these are not our way. We do not bring into this place what destroys our order." "And arson, do we bring that in?" Miriam shot back. The bishop raised his hand. "Sister Miriam, show what you have. This is a one-time permission. After this, we return to our usual ways." He nodded to the men by the generator. The motor growled, the projector lit, and a dark field appeared on the banner. Someone turned down a few oil lamps so the image would be clearer. The barn fell silent. A pool of light from the work lamp appeared on the video. After a minute, 2 figures stepped into it. One taller, movements crisp. The other shorter, awkwardly carrying a can, tripping. The can fell. It was lifted. "You cannot make out faces," someone in the back said. "No," Miriam confirmed. "But there are other markers." Skipping to 107. The taller figure moved out of the light toward the shoulder. In the frame, a pickup. When the door opened, a car passed in the distance, and its headlights slid for a moment across the back window. On the zoomed-in image appeared the outline of a fish with the words, "Jesus saves." "That is Ephraim's pickup," someone said under their breath. Others confirmed without naming names. A whisper spread like a wave. Ephraim stood in back, his head down. His face was gray. "Now 112, Miriam said. The same shorter figure. Uneven shoulders, sharp movements. A quick look back. That is all that was captured. She paused it. A silhouette in half-dark held still on the screen. The bishop took a step forward. "Where did this equipment come from?" he asked, eyes never leaving the image. "From the Mennonite school," one of the men by the projector answered. "For one evening, we brought it. The generator is outside. After the showing, we will take everything away. This drive holds the time, the flight map, and the telemetry files," Miriam added, holding up the flash drive. "There are checksums. The originals are preserved. This is not rumor." Silas raised his hand to ask for the floor. "You allow electricity and strangers' pictures into this place," he said to the bishop. "Today for the sake of truth, tomorrow for the sake of curiosity. This is a violation." "This is an exception," Jacob replied tersely. "The question is whether what is shown here concerns the arson. I need each of you to understand. The recorded time is from 1:03 to 1:12 am. The fire call went out at 1:58 and the difference is about 50 minutes. That matters." "I saw Omram that night," Joseph's voice cracked out from the right. He stood by his father, gripping his hat in both hands. "I recognized his jacket near the house. I told the sheriff that." "He is not in this video," Miriam said calmly. "There is no Omram here. There is a pickup with my brother's decal, and another person shorter." The whisper rose. The bishop rapped his cane on the floor. Quiet. We do not judge. We establish facts. He looked to Miriam. Is there anything else? No. This is enough to cast doubt on the accusation against Amram and to demand the police review the testimony, she said. The telemetry with coordinates can be provided officially. The deacon on the left spoke dryly. This morning the police said there are usable fingerprints on the can, sent for analysis. Results are not back yet. Boots with a suspicious tread were also taken for lab review. For your awareness. Noted, Jacob said. Now to the community. Who can explain why a pickup with this decal was by the house at the stated time? Silence. Ephraim did not move. Then he took a step forward and froze again. His eyes flashed in the projector's light. Miriam felt her mother beside her let out the faintest breath. Silas stepped into the center. This is a manipulated image, he said evenly. Night shadows, headlight glare, anything at all. We cannot draw conclusions from smudges and guesses. Our order is not built on screens. Our order is built on truth, Jacob answered, and on responsibility. He turned to Ephraim. Son, will you say something? Ephraim ran his finger along the bench edge and dropped his head even lower. For a few seconds you could hear only the generators drone outside the wall and the projector's faint fan hiss. Then he gave a short sob. Miriam squeezed her hands so she would not step forward herself. We are stopping the showing, the bishop said. A 5-minute recess. After that we continue the discussion. When the lamps came back up and the projector's hum died, the barn was completely quiet for a few seconds. Bishop Jacob faced Ephraim. Son, he said evenly, why was the pickup with your decal there between 1:03 and 1:12 am? Ephraim ran a hand over his cap, lowered his eyes, and, without raising his head, answered, because I was there. The murmur swelled and fell again. The bishop nodded. Tell it all in order. 2 months ago, Silas, Ephraim swallowed. He said he'd wipe out what I owed for seed and the roof if I helped take care of a problem. Said Amram and his petitions were getting in the way. The plan was, burn the unfinished building, plant something in Amram's yard as a trail, a gas can, and, if possible, one of his tools. They told me the place was empty, that no one would get hurt. Joseph was supposed to confirm he'd seen Amram near the building. I agreed. Miriam stood still. The bishop did not interrupt. That night, Ephraim went on, we came in a pickup. It was me and Joseph. First time was around 1 o'clock. I checked no one inside. I took 2 gas cans. I dropped one, you can see it on the video. By 1:30 everything was set. After a while I went back to Amram's place and put the other can in the unlocked shed. No locks, folks keep them like that. Then we left. A little after 2, the fire started. I didn't think it would go like this. It's my fault. You lit it? The deacon on the left asked for clarity. I poured and lit it, he said quietly. Joseph stayed off to the side and was supposed to tell the sheriff he'd seen a jacket by the building. The bishop turned to Joseph. Is that true? Joseph was crushing his hat so hard his fingers had gone white. Silas said it was for the good of the community, he whispered, that Amram was pulling the English into our business. By the English, he meant non-Amish outsiders. I agreed to say I'd seen him. I didn't want to be at the fire. I was scared. Did your father tell you to do that? Jacob asked, glancing at Silas. No, Silas shot to his feet. That's nonsense. The video is edited. The boy got spooked, and he's saying whatever. Sit, the bishop said. His voice stayed even, but there was no doubt in it. One of the men by the door stepped outside and came back a minute later. The sheriff is already on the way. We called when the showing started. The bishop addressed Ephraim. Do you understand the consequences? Your words amount to a confession. We're not pressuring you. But if you keep speaking, tell the truth. I told the truth, Ephraim said. I'll go with the sheriff and sign my statement. He looked over at Miriam. I'm sorry. She nodded. No words were needed. 10 minutes later, cars stopped by the gate. Sheriff Harrison walked into the barn with 2 deputies. He listened to a brief summary, looked at the frozen frame on the banner, and nodded. "Mr. Lapp," he said to Ephraim, "I'm advising you of your rights. You don't have to answer questions. You have the right to an attorney. Do you wish to say anything now?" "Yes, I set the building on fire, on Silas's direction," Ephraim said without circling around it. "I put the second gas can in Amram's shed around 4 o'clock. The shed was open." The sheriff jotted it down. "I'll take that as an initial statement. We'll take full testimony at the station with your attorney present." He turned to Joseph. "You also said you'd seen Amram near the building. Are you confirming that or changing your statement?" Joseph looked at his father. The bishop gave no hint. "I'm changing it," the young man exhaled. "I lied." The sheriff nodded. "Then you'll come with us for the official record. To seal us separately. Mr. King, as for you suspicion of organizing arson and of pressuring witnesses, you're under arrest. You have the right to an attorney." "You're joking," he swung toward the door. The men in the passage didn't touch him, but stood so he'd have to pass them slowly. The sheriff stopped a deputy with a gesture. The metal cuffs clicked once. "Miss Lapp," the sheriff said to Miriam, "we have the storage device with the copies and the checksums who's keeping the originals." "The school's media drive has them," she said. "I can give you contacts without naming anyone in the community. There's also telemetry tied to the route." "Good. We'll arrange the transfer through an official request," he said. "Thank you, everyone. Please go home calmly." When the door closed behind the officers, the bishop stayed quiet for a while. "Today we allowed something we normally don't," he said at last, "because without it we wouldn't have seen the facts. From here, each of you will speak at a separate council. For now, home." After the meeting in the barn, Miriam didn't head home right away. Amram's buggy was waiting by the gate. After Ephraim's confession and Joseph's change of testimony, the sheriff had released Amram on his own recognizance, no bail until the paperwork could be completed in the morning. They rode in silence. The road was empty. Amram's house met them with cold. He lit the stove, set a kettle to boil, brought in another log. On the table appeared bread, honey, and a jar of apple butter, whatever was at hand. They ate little. Both were worn out. "You can stay the night," he said. "No one will see. I'll take you home in the morning." "If they find out," Miriam answered softly, "they won't accept any repentance." "I'm not asking you to take a risk," Amram said. "I'm offering a roof and a quiet place for one night." She nodded. It got easier to breathe. They sat by the fire a few more minutes. Then Amram showed her clean sheets, handed her a warm blanket, and stepped out so she could change. When he returned, he sat on the edge of a chair. "I want you to know," he said steadily, "I won't make a single move you don't want. After a day like today, you have enough pressure without me." "I don't want to be alone," she said, "and I don't want to pretend everything's fine." He took her hand. A long pause served as an answer all by itself. The night was quiet and deliberate. They spoke little. What happened between them didn't need details and didn't ask for haste. Both understood the consequences. The community would call it a sin, and the council would raise the question of discipline. They made their choice with open eyes. When the fire in the stove died down, Amram added wood, checked the latch on the door, and came back. The window was cracked open. The room held a chill. They lay down holding hands. The fear didn't vanish, but it had less room now. The night passed without alarms. They slept little, but peacefully. At dawn, Amram lit the stove again and brewed barley coffee. While she packed her things, he took out the ashes, stepped into the yard, and looked down the road. "I'm driving you," he said. "Be ready for hard words. I'll stop by after midday and wait by the bridge, if they allow it." They left the house. The yard was quiet. He helped her into the buggy. Before they set out, they hugged briefly, no extra words or gestures. They both knew a council meeting lay ahead and a decision by the community. But after this night, they had a simple, shared compass: hold the line of truth and do not turn from each other. That was enough to keep moving forward. In the morning, Miriam went home. Her parents were waiting on the porch. Her mother's gaze was heavy. Her father said simply, "At 3 o'clock, a meeting in the barn. Be ready." There was no further talk. The barn filled again. The projector and generator had been taken away. In place of the screen was a bare wall. In the circle sat Bishop Jacob and 3 deacons. Men and women separate, as always. A working quiet, without whispers. This wasn't a quarrel, it was a formal sitting. Miriam Lapp, the bishop began. Today we consider violations of the Ordnung, that is, the community's code of rules alleged against you. First, initiating the use of forbidden technology to show a video. Second, contacting and coordinating with English or Mennonite outsiders during an internal community matter. Third, premarital relations by your own admission. He gave her the floor. On the first point, Miriam said, the showing was the only way to stop a false accusation. I didn't turn the equipment on, but I took responsibility for its being there. On the second, yes, I met with a young woman and accepted a storage device from her. Without that, we wouldn't have had the proof. On the third, yes, I spent the night at Omram's. We understand the consequences, but if not for the false charges and the arrest, we would already be husband and wife. Is there repentance? A deacon asked. For lying, none. I didn't lie. For bringing the truth to light, none. For the night at Omram's, I understand I broke the order, she replied. The bishop called for Omram. Are you ready to bear the consequences with her? Yes, Omram said, and to abide by whatever the council decides. The deacons did not deliberate long. The bishop announced, in light of exceptional circumstances, stopping an unjust accusation and cooperating with law enforcement, and given the open confession regarding the third point, the council rules as follows: temporary discipline for 6 months for both of you. Conditions: attendance at worship is permitted. Participation in the Lord's Supper is not. Shared meals with the community are not. Participation in major decisions is not. After 6 months, another council will review the matter. If in that time you show discipline and do not break other precepts, we will consider full restoration. If not, the shunning will become complete. Are there additional requirements? Omram asked. Yes, a deacon replied. You will live on a separate place, with no overnights at your parents' homes. You will avoid public displays of affection. You will work and keep to the order. No technology and no bringing outsiders into internal community matters. We accept, Miriam said. The bishop addressed the community. This decision is not a reward and not a punishment for show. It is an attempt to keep truth and order at the same time. For 6 months, do not speak reproaches about them and do not invite them to shared meals. Help with work with the elders, consent is allowed. Miriam's mother lowered her eyes. Her father gave a short nod, no words. When the meeting ended, people left in silence. No hands were extended, but no one turned away either. The decision was clear and understood. 6 months of discipline, then a review. Out in the yard, Omram came within 2 steps closer, wouldn't have been proper. We stick to the plan, he said. We work, we don't provoke, we wait for the council. All right, Miriam answered. She knew every step they took now would be watched. But the boundaries were defined, and that already gave support. 6 months passed exactly. They lived on Omram's farm. Work from morning to evening, minimal talk with neighbors, no shared community meals, just as the council had set down. People kept their distance, but there was no cold boycott. Someone would leave a sack of flour by the porch, someone else a bundle of firewood. Help without words. The legal process moved along in its own time. During that period, there were preliminary hearings and plea agreements. Ephraim pled guilty and cooperated with the investigation. He received 2 years of probation, mandatory restitution for damages, and a ban on working with flammable materials. Joseph formally recanted his false statement, admitted to joining the scheme, and got 1 year of community service and required counseling. Salas went to trial on evidence of organizing the arson, pressuring a witness, and committing land paper fraud. The court imposed 5 years in prison and a fine. These were not instant verdicts, but the outcome of months of filings and hearings. The wedding was simple. A pavilion at the old station, a few benches, voices joining into one clear melody. When the pastor blessed them, the locomotive let out a long, gentle whistle, as if someone had said, yes. They hadn't prepared speeches or searched for grand words. Amram only lifted her hand to his lips and whispered, "Together from now on and always." "Together," Miriam answered. Toward sunset, they drove to the bridge over the Conestoga. The water ran steady, like breathing after a long fear. On the railing sat a round fresh loaf under a white napkin and a short note. For the road, Jacob. Miriam smiled. It wasn't much, but it was exactly right. They broke the bread in half first, then she, and for the first time in a long, while they ate without hurrying like at home. "Do you regret what's behind us?" Omram asked. "No," she said, watching the water. "Because we came here together. Everything else is behind us." He wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. There was no worry in the gesture, now only quiet certainty. They stood that way while the sun faded behind the hills, and everything found its place. The community's voices behind them, the field ahead, the home between the two of them. On the way back, they didn't say much. In the yard, Amram lifted Miriam down from the buggy as if he were afraid to set her on the ground too abruptly. In the house, a lamp was burning. The table was set simply. Milk, honey, a few apples, and that same bread now theirs. She straightened the curtain at the window. He put into a jug a handful of wildflowers Ephraim had brought as a wordless gift. Small motions were adding up to a new life. "Say it again," Miriam asked, touching his sleeve. "What exactly?" "That you love me." He smiled rarely and for real. "I love you." She nodded and laid her head on his chest. His heartbeat was steady like the water under the bridge. Outside it was already getting dark. A first little light showed in a far-off barn across the field. They put out the lamp, leaving the room half lit by the stove, and sat together on the floor shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand. Nothing more was needed, no vows, no explanations. Their plan was simple and solid. Work, protect one another, and never back away from the truth. Tomorrow would bring the field, the dough, a thin thread of smoke from the chimney, and morning prayer. And tonight their shared home and their first night as husband and wife, with no more shadow of fear. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out, because this is nothing compared to what's next. If you are under 18, don't even think about clicking next.